All right, today we're going deep. We're heading straight into the brain to figure out the real story behind one of its most famous and most misunderstood chemicals. Let's get into the story of dopamine.
Yeah, of course you have. It's impossible to miss it these days, right? You see it everywhere. Social media, news articles, people talking about getting their dopamine hit from scrolling. But what if I told you that almost everything you think you know about it is probably wrong?
Yep, the pleasure chemical, the feel-good molecule, these are the labels it gets stuck with. But honestly, that's just scratching the surface. It's like calling the internet a place to watch cat videos. I mean, it's not wrong, but it misses the entire point. The real story is so much cooler. So let's set the record straight. Okay, so to really get this, we got to go back to square one. Let's meet the molecule itself. What even is dopamine?
So at its most basic level, dopamine is what's known as a neurotransmitter. Now, that's just a fancy word for a chemical messenger. Think of it like a tiny postman or a courier running through your brain, delivering critical messages from one nerve cell, one neuron, to another. It's one of the absolute bedrock chemicals for how your brain talks to itself.
Okay, you might stumble across some pretty sciencey terms for it, like monoamine or catecholamine. Don't let your eyes glaze over. Seriously, don't worry about the jargon. All these words are doing is describing its family tree, chemically speaking. They're just labels that chemists use to say, hey, it's made from this one type of amino acid, and oh, it has this cool little ring structure here. That's it. It's just a chemical blueprint.
All right, so if your brain is using this stuff all the time, where does it get it? It's not like it can just pop down to the chemical store, right? Nope. Your brain is a master chemist. It has its own little dopamine factory, running 24/7.
And get this, the recipe is almost ridiculously simple. It's just two little steps. First, your brain grabs an ingredient called tyrosine. It's an amino acid you get from the food you eat. It does a little chemical magic and turns that into something called L-dopa. Then, for step two, another little chemical tool, an enzyme, just comes along and snips a piece off of that L-dopa, and boom, you've got dopamine. That's simple. It's happening inside your head as we speak. How cool is that?
So once the factory churns it out, what happens? The dopamine doesn't just wander off aimlessly. Oh no. It gets loaded up and sent out on these incredibly specific, well-defined routes. You can think of them like superhighways, crisscrossing all over your brain.
And every highway system needs a starting point, right? These dopamine highways all begin in a handful of key production hubs. The two absolute main eventers are tucked away deep in your midbrain. They're called the substantia nigra and the ventral tegmental area, or VTA for short. Think of these as the grand central stations of dopamine, dispatching it all over the place.
Okay, let's look at our first superhighway. This is the nigrostriatal pathway. And hey, the name kind of gives it away, right? It starts in the nigro, the substantia nigro, and travels to the striatal, the striatum. Easy enough. Now tuck this one away in your memory banks, because it is absolutely essential for controlling how you move.
All right, highway number 2 is the mesolimbic pathway. This one starts at that other major hub, the VTA, and its destination is the limbic system. That's the part of your brain that handles a lot of emotion and memory. Now, this is the famous one. When you hear people talking about dopamine and reward, or addiction, or motivation, they're talking about this pathway.
And our third main route is the mesocortical pathway. It's also leaving from the VTA station, but this one's headed uptown, to the prefrontal cortex. That's your brain's CEO. The part right behind your forehead that's in charge of the big stuff, planning, making decisions, basically a huge part of what makes you, you.
So let's recap for a second. We've got different factories and different highways heading to totally different neighborhoods in the brain. And this is so important because it gets to the core of what dopamine really is. Its job completely changes depending on its destination. It's not a one-trick pony, it's a multi-talented superstar.
And this is where it all clicks into place. Just look at this breakdown. Highway 1, the nigrostriatal, its job is movement, period. Highway 2, the mesolimbic, that's your motivation and reward-seeking system. And Highway 3, the mesocortical, that's your executive function, your ability to focus and plan. See? Same molecule, 3 completely different, crucial jobs.
And look, this isn't just some abstract concept from a textbook. We see the real-world consequences of this system. Take Parkinson's disease, for example. What happens in Parkinson's is that those dopamine-making cells in the substantia nigra, they start to die. So there's not enough dopamine to send down that nigrostriatal highway. The result? The brain's signals for movement get scrambled, leading to the tremors and stiffness that are hallmarks of the disease. It's a tragic but powerful example of just how vital that one pathway is.
And just when you think you've got it figured out, the brain throws another curveball. Because it's not just about where the dopamine goes, it's also about the doorbell it rings when it gets there. See, there are at least 5 different kinds of dopamine receptors. Think of them as different docking stations. And depending on which type of station the dopamine plugs into, it causes a totally different reaction in that next cell. It's just mind-blowingly complex.
Okay, let's pull all these threads together. We've seen the factory, we've traveled the highways, we've seen the different jobs. So now it's finally time to bust the myth. Let's get beyond the hype.
You know, there's a quote that just perfectly captures this. It says, "The functions of dopamine are so complex they can't be explained in a short summary." And that's exactly right. The idea that you can just slap a label like pleasure on this molecule that controls movement, motivation, and focus, it just completely falls apart when you look at the evidence.
So if you take away just one thing today, let it be this. Dopamine is not the pleasure chemical. It's the motivation chemical. It's not the feeling of getting the reward. It's the feeling of wanting the reward so badly that you go get it. It's the drive, the pursuit, the craving. It's what gets you off the couch to chase a goal. It's the engine, not the destination.
So that leaves me with one last question for you. If dopamine is really all about motivation, about that drive to pursue something, what is it motivating in you right now? What's your brain telling you to go after? Something to think about. Thanks so much for diving into this with me.